third International Conference on World Mental Health Week. As you all aware about this initiative, today on this platform we have a very special guest speaker with us, Honorable Michael NABIREEBA from Uganda, East Africa. He is a founder and director at Trauma Recovery Foundation, also a clinical psychologist and a counselor. He is doing a great work for humanity. Today, he is going to enlighten us on a very relevant topic, that is the resilience and hope in trauma survivors. So, first of all, thank you so much, Michael, for providing your valuable time. And from the audience, if anyone has any query or question, you can ask as usual in the comment section. So, once again, thanks a lot for your valuable time. Now we can proceed.
Okay, thank you so much, Samyak, and all the organizers, and to whoever is listening to me live on this streamline. I welcome you into this discussion. Being the World Mental Health Week, I take this opportunity to share with you about resilience and hope in survivors of human trafficking. Samyak has said, Trauma Recovery Foundation works to support the survivors of human trafficking, especially young ladies who have been trafficked, taken to Arab countries, or even domestically, and they go through a lot of exploitation. For example, they are exposed to heavy work, working with no time to rest. At times, some of them are beaten. We've had cases whereby some people have had their kidneys or body organs removed, and some of them come back to the country when they have been deported and they are mentally unaware. And so it really takes time, it takes grace to journey with them to ensure they attain back their stability. And one of the therapies that we empower them with is teaching them how to be resilient and how to be hopeful enough that with time they can heal and then stabilize once again and become better and are in a position to pursue their dreams. Maybe to begin with, what do we understand by trauma? Of course, trauma is a psychological wound that is caused by exposure to violence or any kind of abuse. Each one of us is born when we are mentally okay. We have no stressors, but the events or the life situations that we get exposed to, they kind of strain our minds. And in a way of straining our minds, and the minds are unable to coordinate well, and we are unable to carry on our daily duties, that's what we refer as to trauma, whereby the brain has been strained and then it cannot function because it has been exposed to a traumatizing event or an event that is not so pleasing. And the trauma sometimes begins as stress, just minor stress, but when there is a prolonged exposure to these some stressors or a number of events that cause you to stress, then the mind, the brain is kind of shut down, and that's what results into trauma. And of course, once someone has really been mentally breakdown, sometimes they lose hope and they're like, maybe they're going to remain within that state. But we need to empower them and teach them how about resilient and how we can, so that we can be in a position to instill hope in them so that they're able to participate actively through medication and therapy so that they're able to stabilize in the future and then lead positive lives. And so to get back on the point, what is resilience and what is hope? Resilience is the ability to bounce back from setbacks and failures, or as the ability to recover quickly and easily from stress, upsets, and setbacks. Resilience is that force that keeps you moving. When hope it becomes hopeless, that keeps you moving, that force that keeps telling you you can make it. To bounce back from setbacks, For example, you are healing from trauma, maybe you're experiencing a lot of hallucinations, voices, and you can't stop them. Maybe the mind keeps on telling you there is no way you'll get rid of this. But as time progresses, you keep noticing that there has been a number of improvements. And therefore, if you recognize that, that hope that keeps you going is what we refer to as resilience. You are strong enough. You are like, despite the situation, hard as it is, tough as it is, I will keep moving because one day I will make it. And so it can also be referred to as confidence, the ability to spot or to promote or to grab opportunities. For example, if it is medication, you're like, I will hang on this medication. If it is therapy, you're like, this therapy is taking me through healing, therefore I hang on it. I'm strong enough and optimistic that it will lead me somewhere. And then hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a particular thing to happen. And of course, we hope always for something that is positive. We can never hope for disaster. But for us to, as we are hoping, or the survivors of human trafficking, when they are looking forward to attaining recovery, they live with hope. But while they are living with hope, they have to be strong enough, to be resilient enough to go through back and forth a number of discouragements or displeasures that at times tend to discourage them. And I continue, being resilient does not mean that a person doesn't experience difficulty or distress. In life, we have always had people referring to others that this person is strong, the other person is strong. Yes, you may be strong, but this doesn't stop the fact that challenges will always come. Emotional pain and sadness are common in people who have suffered major adversity or trauma in their lives. In fact, the road to resilience is likely to involve considerable emotional distresses. You can take an example of a young child who is trying to stand up, learning how to stand. Yes, standing up is his recovery point of a survivor, what he or she wants to attain. But then, as the baby keeps on standing up, it keeps on falling, but it never gives up. So, that force that keeps the child going, the same force that keeps a survivor of trauma moving, wishing one time to attain recovery, is what we are referring to as resilience. Sometimes it comes with discouragements. You can fall back, you can relapse back, and you're like, I will not make it. But the force that keeps you going, that power that keeps you, that despite the falls, I will still make it, is what we are referring to as resilience. Resilience is not a trait or a mannerism that people either have or do not have. It involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and developed in anyone. So we can never say, I was born resilient or the other one was not born resilient. It all depends on how what do we think about? If I'm faced with a challenge, does my mind keep on telling me it's the end has come? If my mind keeps on telling me I can make it, things will become better. So in the end, on the process, I become resilient. Or the way I behave when I'm faced with a traumatic experience. Do I so much involve myself into suicidal behaviors or suicidal ideations? If I involve myself into that, automatically the mind will become weaker because hope gets diminished. You feel the only thing you can do is to end your life, and therefore you are not resilient enough. And also actions, the things that we do. Looking at taking drugs, for example. Maybe you have gone through a traumatic experience, and then because it is so overwhelming, it is so stressing, and then you only resort to taking drugs to kind of do away with the stress, do away with the trauma. In the end, you find that the drugs are also becoming another trauma. They kind of escalate the problem. And therefore, you start describing yourself as, I am weak, I cannot make it. But it is an action, not that you are born weak, not that you are not resilient enough, but your behaviors, your way of thinking, and your way of acting has kind of lowered your resilient levels. And therefore, in the end, you lose hope. So no one can ever say, I was born resilient or I was not born resilient. It's all about how we think or how we interpret the events that we find ourselves in. we can look at that huge rolling stone. Of course, this is a hill, and this gentleman has to roll it up the hill to the peak. Honestly speaking, looking at the weight of the stone and the gentleman who is holding it, it is a heavy burden. And that stone represents the traumatic experiences that survivors, or even me and you, will go through in our lifestyle. And of course, as we are trying to push it to attain recovery to reach the hill, of course, the stone will keep on coming back to you. But then you have to hold on, because the moment you leave it and you give up, automatically it will come to you and it will crush you. So you keep on pushing, it comes back. You keep on pushing, it comes back. You keep on pushing, it comes back. But in the end, you're able to roll it to the highest peak to attain recovery. And that is what we call being resilient, but you are being driven by hope that one day, one time, I will make it to the end. How can we build resilient? Therefore, at times, we normally empower our the survivors. We give them some skills, some tips on how best they can build resilient, how best they can go through traumatizing situations or difficult situations that they find themselves in. We also encourage them to make connections, good relationships with close family members, friends, or others are very important. Accepting help and support from those who care about you and who listen to you strengthens your resilience. Some people find that being active in a civic or public local groups, faith-based organizations, or any other local groups provide social support and can help with reclaiming hope. Assisting others in their time of need also can benefit the helper. For example, when you talk about depression, let's say maybe we've had a survivor who was sexually abused, who was beaten up, maybe exposed to a number of violent actions, and then in the end, the person or the survivor, suffers depression. One of the major symptoms that survivors of depression always normally exhibit is withdrawing from the community. They want to be alone. They cut themselves away from the world. They feel they are not worth socializing with others. They get off from the activities that probably they previously enjoyed. But then making connections, coming back to the community, relating well with others can kind of distract the mind. And of course, as time goes on, the event, the size of the event keeps on depreciating. It keeps on depreciating. So we need social network. It's like a tree. A tree cannot stand alone without roots that hold it firm within the soil. And therefore, a tree being a trauma survivor, the roots are the connections that you have made. That despite the wind, despite the storms, you are able to stand firm because of the support, because of the connections that you've made. You can talk to your friends, and that's why there's a saying that a problem shared is half solved. Because someone can open up your mind. Maybe by talking to someone, what seemed like a huge burden becomes lighter. We've had incidences whereby a survivor comes in a session and you just give her that platform to share his or her story. At the end of the story, someone feels like the whole burden is gone because he or she has had someone to listen to him, someone to he can share the burden with, and therefore it is always important to make connections. And another way of building resilience is avoid seeing crisis as in someone avoid seeing crises as insurmountable or overwhelming, impossible, or problems. Of course, when you are stuck in a situation, it appears to be impossible. Why? Because you haven't begun on it. But when you keep on breaking it slowly, then you realize what you thought was so burdensome is no longer as burdensome as you thought it was. And so, uh, and so, sorry. Okay. And so You can't change the fact that high stressing events happen, but you can change how you interpret them and respond to these events. Try looking beyond the present to how the future is likely to be. Of course, when you are stuck in the situation, you kind of become numb. You become stuck. It's like everything has come to an end. You are looking at a mountain. Even when people try to talk to you, you are like, I don't think I will ever forget what I went through. I don't think I will ever maybe go through what I experienced. Sometimes we go through events, but how do we interpret them? Do we look at the future with hope, because I understand each one of us has gone through a number of experiences maybe in the past, and at some point you are like, how will I overcome from this? But here you are, here I am. We've overcome them. So sometimes we need to look back at the past on those tough situations that we have gone through, and then we are able to focus on the future with hope. Because at times we tend to exaggerate the event and make it appear bigger than actual it is. And that one kind of blocks or impends our healing. So it is always good to keep perspective. If the event is small, don't magnify it. Keep perspective, keep it as small as it is. If it is huge, a long journey takes steps. Be hopeful, be optimistic that huge as it is, tough as it is, as time goes on, you can still make it. And then, of course, trauma comes with a negative view of oneself because you feel the mind has shut down. It takes away at times all the hope. Sometimes it comes with the feelings of self rejection. You look at yourself as someone who is not worth living. And maybe at times, because of the environments, the families, the communities we live in, people might even call us names, what we call labeling or naming. And at times, we tend to believe whatever they call us. But we need always to develop confidence in our ability to solve problems and trusting our instincts that can help us rebuild resilience. There is always that inner voice in you that keeps on telling you you can make it. Despite the outside forces, the outside discouragements that keep on telling you you cannot make it, there is always that inner ability, the inner force, the inner power, that is force of resilience that keeps on telling you you can make it. It's always good that we focus on that, not on the negative, or with that we don't have to view ourselves as people who have lost it all. We need to look at everything with a positive mind. Keep things perspective. I've already been talking about this. Even if when you are facing very painful events, try to consider the stressful situation in a broader context and keep a long time perspective. Avoid blowing the event out of proportion. You get an accident, maybe it was a minor accident, but the way you are narrating the story is like it was huge. It's like 1,000 people have died. Yet, in actual sense, maybe no one has died. And so, in the end, when you are narrating such a kind of a story, the mind will take it to be something huge. And of course, they will keep on traumatizing you once in a while because you keep on re experiencing it. But again, the people you've shared with, they also get that secondary trauma because they were the fact that they are not eyewitnesses or they are not directly involved into the traumatic event. Because of the fact that you magnify it, you make it look bigger than it actually is, kind of transforms secondary trauma to those whom you are telling it to. And then we always need to maintain a hopeful outlook. We keep hope because it is only hope that keeps us moving. But they always tell us that the moment you lose hope, the next step is definitely you'll commit suicide because you don't see the reason as to why you should even spend the next hour or the next minute living. So we need to keep hope. And then we should also move towards our goals. Develop some realistic goals. Do something regularly, even if it seems like small accomplishment. It is something that enables you to move towards your goals instead of focusing on the tasks that seem unachievable. Ask yourself, what one thing I know I can accomplish today that helps me move in the direction I want to go? My dear brothers and sisters outside there listening to me, Sometimes when you are faced with a trauma, of course, it is something that is unpleasing. It is not something worth feeling or worth enjoying. And at times you want to come out of it within a minute. But then we have to look at a building like a house, something that has taken 2, 3, 4, 5 months or years to be set up, to be raised. It cannot be demolished within one day. But slowly, by bringing it down into proportion, in the day we are able to raise the whole structure. What seemed impossible is now possible. So we need to keep focused. We don't have to focus on the failures, but if there are those small things that we are able to achieve, then it's good that we do what we are able to push on. We need to take decisive actions. Act on decisive situation, on adverse situations as much as you can. Take decisive actions rather than detaching completely from problems and stresses and wishing they could just go away. Of course, when you keep watching a situation, it will stay. It cannot go away because you are not doing your best to ensure that the situation goes away. So you must be ready for action. You must be ready for the battle. You must be ready for the fight because it is your life that you are trying to set free. It is your life that you are trying to heal, and therefore you must take action. But it comes with hope that I'm beginning this journey. I believe that I will come to an end. Then we need to look at for opportunities for self-discovery. Sometimes when we are faced with a traumatic experience, of course, everything in us shuts down. Even our areas where we used to be strong kind of collapse. And we only look at ourselves as weaklings, like everything in us is weak. There is nothing positive. I cannot live up to anything. And so everything is lost into negativity. That even the slightest hope that you would still have becomes hopeless. Why? Because you don't look at opportunities for self-discovery. If, for example, you have been traumatized by maybe you've lost a good paying job and maybe you are like, that's the only source of income that I've been having, probably you may have some savings and you can say, why can't I set up a business of myself? Maybe why by doing the business, as time goes on, I may be in a position maybe to apply and who knows an opportunity can come and I get another job. Sometimes uh, you fall sick, and then everything you look at life that life has come to an end. But you need to look at options. You can take medication. If it is HIV, let's say you have been affected by HIV/AIDS, doesn't mean that life has come to an end. No, there is another opportunity that life gives you another chance that you can take on medication. If you adhere to medication well, maybe attend to counseling and psychotherapy, then you can be in a position to live again, even for more and more years. We need to take care of ourselves. When people are stressed or they have gone through traumatizing experiences, they always experience self-rejection. You really feel you are not worth living. You really feel it's better if you died and then ceases to be. And by doing that, most of them stop eating because they be like, why do I have to eat anyway? If there is a medication, most of them stop taking the medicine. They're like, why do I have to take the medicine? My life is already gone. If it is attending to counseling, people dodge their appointments. They don't meet their counselors. But then we need to take care of ourselves. We need to pay attention to your own needs and feelings. Engage in activities that you enjoy and find relaxing. Exercise regularly. Taking care of yourself helps to keep your mind and body primed, aware to deal with situations that require resilience. If you withdraw, of course, you become lonely. The only person you see around yourself is yourself. And therefore, and withdraw or hiding in a quiet place kind of again digs you or takes you deeper into a number of tough, intrusive thoughts, and hope keeps on diminishing. But for example, when you take time and you do progressive muscle relaxations, when you take time and run around, when you take time to go and swim, of course, the swimming will not take away the problem, but again, the mind will have kind of experienced a different environment. You're not confined in one situation. Maybe the thought of the swimming pool can keep on coming. Maybe the thought of the beach, wherever you have been, can keep on coming. Maybe the cars that you were seeing as you jogged alongside the road may keep on coming in the mind. And of course, as they come in mind, they are taking away some proportion of the trauma. They are occupying that void, that emptiness that keeps on recording the traumatic experiences that you've gone through. And that's how healing keeps on coming in a small percentage, but with hope and resilient enough, surely you are able to come to an end. Rightly, they suggest that using trial and error, you can have to find the ways that are likely to work well for you as part of your own personal strategy to build resilience. Of course, as you are trying to take care of yourself, sometimes you need to identify what works for me. Whenever I run, does it put anything on me? Whenever I engage myself in a number of activities, does it distract my mind and maybe I feel a lot of hope is coming? Whenever I go for swimming, whenever I go for counseling, whenever I take medication, what works for me? It's not good not to try. Try and fail so that you're able to identify whenever I try this, I fail, but when I try the other one, it easily works for me. Then we also need to accept that change is part of living. That's why we are born as young, we keep on growing until we become adults. We go through experiences that at times are overwhelming. Why? Because we are not in charge of the future. For example, if a young lady was leaving her country, going to maybe to seek employment, maybe in an outside country, definitely if this person knew that wherever she is going, she's going to go through exploitation, definitely she wouldn't decide to go. She would better stay in her country, going through challenges, but comfortable enough, resilient enough, and strong enough at least to maintain her mental stability. But we move with a positive mind, thinking that outside there where we are going, life will become better. But then, to our disappointment, our surprise, things change. We don't meet our expectations. And therefore, we can never regret. You never know, you can even heal. Maybe if you have gone somewhere, you've been exploited, you have healed, now you try another place, it works for you. So we need to know that change is a fact of life. It's like I can be healthy, I'm looking well, but tomorrow I'm sick. Doesn't take away the fact that I will still recover and be strong again. So the survivors of trauma survivors or trauma victims, they always need to know that change is a fact of life. It is part of life. We go through different experiences, but when we go through them, they make us stronger. And therefore, we also need what we call, there are a number of skills that we need. And that is, one of them can be self-awareness. Definition: a person's knowledge of themselves and their worth as a person. Self awareness is a condition for choice and control. If your thoughts and feelings are operating outside of the awareness, then they control you. If you want to control them, then first thing is to open up a window of awareness that is a chance to pause and consider before choosing or deciding and acting. Sometimes when we are faced with a traumatizing event or when we are overwhelmed by stress, we don't take time to reflect. And therefore, that keeps us in denial. No, it is not me. It cannot happen to me. But the reality is, you are in that. You have been exploited. You are vulnerable. But it takes time for us to do what? To accept it. So you need to come to your senses and then be like, yes, this is me now. I used to be fine, but then I've gone through this kind of experience. Accept it. Then ask yourself, then how do I go about it? Because the more we live in denial, the longer the healing process definitely will take. And therefore, self-awareness is the foundation of all other resilience and emotional intelligence skills. The moment you've known your situation, you've accepted it, and then you are able to take a step and you're ready for action in order to be able to overcome it. We look at attention. Your attention or your focus is like a muscle to many ways. It can be trained and developed. Being focused means being in here and now. Sometimes when trauma comes, we gather the past, we gather the present, and we gather the future. And therefore, we are not paying attention on what is happening now. We are only worried of when will I recover. We've heard about people who live each day as it comes. And such has it that such people always tend to live longer because they are not worried about the future. Why? They do not know how the future would going to come. They don't worry about the present. Why? Because they're already in it. They cannot worry about the past. Why? Because after all, it is already past. And you can never be given an opportunity to go back and change it. But you can focus ahead and change the future. When you're not focused, your mind tends to either worry about the future or regretting about the past, and that delays your recovery process. So paying attention, being aware of the situation you are facing are one of the skills that you can use also to attain this resilience. Letting go, that is part one, the physical. I know it's always hard to let go of the past because the mind is something that is intangible. It is something that you cannot control. It is something that whether you try to stop it, whether you try to distract it, still those reminders will always come. You may even hear the voices telling you, you are like this, you are like this and this. Physically, you feel out of pain. Mentally, emotionally, you are broken. So we have to let go. There are two parts of letting go, and the first is letting go in a physical or bodily sense. In the first place, that can make letting one go of muscles and tension, calming the body, reducing restlessness and agitation, that is anxiety and worry, and physiological or physical arousal. If you don't allow yourself to calm down, all the physical effects resulting from the trauma act as reminders of what you have gone through. Whenever you see the pain, you feel the pain, immediately the mind runs to what caused that pain. Whenever you feel that backache, you immediately the mind will take you maybe to Saudi Arabia or any other country where that man or woman made you to overwork, or beat you. So we always need to, first of all, let go of physical pain through progressive muscle relaxations, through painkillers guided by the doctor's prescription to avoid self-medication, and so that we're able to stabilize. And then the second aspect of letting go of the mental senses. That means separating yourself to a degree, at least from your own thinking and the narratives, stories, praying, and stories about the world from the world itself. So, creating a space around thinking tends to take the heat out of the emotions. Sometimes we tend to name ourselves or identify ourselves with the traumatic experiences that we do go through. But if, for example, I have been going through a lot of exploitation, I am not exploitation. If I suffered an accident, I am not that accident. If maybe I have had a chronic illness, I am me, and the illness is the illness. And therefore, we need to separate the two. And separating yourself from the event or from the trauma helps you to become stronger. It helps you not to own it. And the more you keep on distancing or separating yourself from it, the more also it keeps on going away. And in the end, you are able to attain freedom. So, my dear brothers and sisters outside there, thank you so much for listening to me, for taking your time to listen to me sharing with you a number of skills, a number of techniques on how survivors of trauma can always attain resilience, always aiming that and being hopeful that one time they will attain recovery and be sober. Thank you so much.
First of all, thanks a lot for in-depth knowledge as per your experience, how you are doing, and what is the role of resilience, the conditions of the trauma survivors, or how the role of a psychologist or person or expert in that cases. So, first of all, I want to ask that what is your message to the mental health professionals who are dealing with such kind of cases as you are doing in your country very well. So, what will be your advice to the mental health professional regarding these issues?
Okay, thank you so much, Samyak, for the question. Uh, my message to mental professionals who are dealing with survivors of trauma outside there, I would advise them always to be patient. Patience is always key because by the time someone reaches a state whereby we are to say this person has suffered trauma, it means they have been exposed to a number of experiences that personally or me or you may not know. And maybe at times we may not know how long their story began. And at times we may push them to attain recovery in the shortest time possible. And maybe they are unable because the mind is the most fragile part of the brain, of the mind, of the human. And the fact after it has been affected, it's always not easy to put back together and someone attains ability. So as we handle the survivors of trauma, we need to give them time. We need to journey with them patiently and continue to help them to build resilience. When they relapse and maybe they feel they cannot do much, we have to keep on encouraging them. We don't have to rush to refund. You are like, I've failed on this person. Keep patient, knowing that the person also is struggling, but at times things may not be working out as, of course, as wished. And of course, additionally, we also need to be empathetic enough. Try to imagine yourself, you are the one in that situation. Would you heal within a no minute? How long would it take you to overcome such a kind of a state? Because at times, as practitioners, we always want to run through cases. You are like, this one is delaying to me, it's not recovering, it's not showing any positive signs. So you want to rush to another person. We focus on numbers, yet our major focus should be on this one person. It brings a lot of joy when this one person who has been overwhelmed by events recovers than you rushing to attain numbers. Thank you so much. That's what I can say on that.
Thank you so much. You mentioned a very important thing that action provides us satisfaction if we change someone's life, and especially in the cases of trauma survivors. So you mentioned very well important point, and I thank for your philosophy regarding it. Another question is from one of our previous speaker, Catherine ma'am. She wants to ask, what do you advise the caretakers of the traumatized people? She wants to ask a similar one. So, what will your answer to him? Her, sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much, Catherine, for the question. And it's very important to ask that question. At times, as caretakers or as professionals, we tend to think it is the other person who needs healing. It is him or her who has the challenge. But then we forget to take care of our mental well being. And in the end, you may also suffer what we call vicarious trauma because every day you are listening to different stories and in the end they kind of also affect you. So it is always very important at the end of the day to do what they call debriefing. sit down somewhere, ask yourself, how many stories have I listened to? Then you kind of process them. Try to listen to them again for the second time, for the third time, and then afterwards let go. And at times, as service providers, we tend to forget that we need to balance work and life. We neglect the other daily activities that we're supposed to be engaged into. And we put the whole of ourselves, the whole of our minds, the whole of our life into seeing these people or the survivors better. But then at times, if you've done your session, then it's always good that you take your time off and get involved into other activities. Then seek support. You need to seek support because as a counselor, as a psychotherapist, you also have the brains, you can be traumatized, you are also a victim who can easily become a survivor. So it is important that you also seek support to professionals, go through counseling, tell your story so that you are in a position to keep a sober mind. And one time we were training the police who work on the porous border points, the immigration officers, and this thing came up. They deal directly with with the cases of human trafficking because they meet these people on the porous borders, and then maybe the girls, the boys are writing their traumatizing stories, and then these people being parents, they try to imagine what these people go through outside there. They have family stressors, they have other work related issues, and so in the end, they become overwhelmed and they may not be able to support. Why? We need to take time off work, we need to relax, we need to seek support, we need to share with others. If at times a case, maybe you come up across a case that is so overwhelming, find someone outside there, then you can always share and then find a way of breaking down something that appeared huge so that you're in a position to support a survivor in a best position. So as we support others, in summary, we need to think of our own mental well-being because it is when we are sober that we are in a position to support others outside there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for such a nice explanation. As we know, you are founded the Trauma Recovery Foundation at this very young age. So I want to ask more about how this idea came into your mind and what are the things you are doing with this initiative. So kindly explain in brief about it so that young aspirants at this age having some career opportunities also in field of psychology. So that should really inspire them also. So kindly provide a brief about all this initiative and how someone can be at their own level can start up like this.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Samiak, for the question. I also actually happen to go through a number of traumatizing experiences in my past lifestyle, but during that time, I never had any idea of what trauma looks like. Actually, I'd never even heard about the word trauma. But then when I entered into my class of clinical and counseling psychology, that's the master's level, I came across this course unit. And then it was like unveiling all that I had gone through. I said, I wish I had gained this knowledge prior to going through an experience. Perhaps it would have helped me to recover faster or to become better in the shortest time possible. So when I was at the university, it is something that I developed interest in because it kind of healed me, it relieved me, and then I was like, I need to start something in line with that so that I will be able to support maybe my brothers and sisters outside there who may suffer a number of experiences and maybe perhaps they don't know the reality of these experiences and how best they can overcome them. And so, as an organization, it is still at its grassroots level, but then I have hope that as time goes on, it will become a big organization and even reach an international level. Thank you so much. And in case someone outside there is willing to work with us, to partner with us, or to kind of share knowledge with us, we are widely open. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a motivational initiative by your side, and it's emphasized that one should have empathy, a feeling of serving the society and humanity in itself, so that all these kinds of divine good initiative came from someone. So very nice listening. This also very inspirational one. Uh, Before winding up today's session with you, Michael. I want to ask or I requesting you to kindly provide a conclude message through this presentation to whole the world and humanity. What the message you wants to deliver to whole the world and humanity.
Okay, to everyone outside there who is listening to me, I would say pain is real, but time heals. In life, we shall always go through experiences that do not leave us the same. They will always have an impediment in our lives. But with the patience, being resilient enough, keeping the hope moving, you can always make it because time has answered so many questions. Thank you.